Thank you very much for joining us, both online and here today in Genk. So yes, I'm going to discuss a little bit the economic impact of nature-based solutions. And what I'll do is, first of all, is look a little bit at the publication that we launched this morning, which we gave a very brief introduction to. And then I'll really zoom in on some of the work that we've been doing in connecting nature with nature-based enterprises, which is one part of that report. So let me get started. As Philippe was here today, I thought it would be very opportunistic to produce or to begin with a quote from his boss, from John Bell, the director of the Healthy Planet Directorate in the European Commission. And John Bell has been a great supporter of the work that we are doing. He's spoken at our Enterprise Summit last year, and also indeed at the launch of the Connecting Nature Enterprise Platform. And this is a quote taken from the foreword to the EC publication. And what I really like about it is that he recognises that nature-based solutions have the potential to be at the centre of a paradigm shift that is needed. Everybody knows, and we saw Jan Rotman's presented this morning, that we're on track from the latest IPCC report to more than double the Paris target. We're heading for 3 degrees. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about changing perspectives and thinking with nature, but we also need to rapidly change how we act and how the type of nature or industry and businesses that we invest in. So it's, I really like that John Bell has sees nature-based solutions as playing a vital role in part of this shift. And the other thing that I really like is the last part, that, you know, the time is running out, he says, and we all know this, and it's time to move from a niche movement. And we're seeing a lot of businesses starting to make incremental changes, but now we really need to accelerate those changes, and we need a lot more research and a lot of work to find out how to do that. So, thank you for your support. This is the publication. I'm conscious that there are people online that weren't there perhaps for the launch this morning. So just to say that this is the result of very much a collaborative effort. And my role was not so much lead author as lead coordinator, bringing together all of these experts, I think from 16 Horizon 2020 projects, who came together and contributed case studies and examples and testimonials in this publication, which really tries to be quite practical in terms of identifying the potential for nature-based solutions to in this transition to a nature-based economy. And it's based on a draft white paper which we produced earlier, which we put out for consultation, and we got 170 responses, more than that actually, from around the world. And we really reached out to different countries through different forums and events to make sure that we took different global perspectives into account. So let me just talk to you. One of the things that came up in the consultation, the questions that we got a lot is, well, what is the nature-based economy? What is the nature-positive economy? And how is it different from like the bioeconomy and the circular economy? And, you know, the more jargon we introduce, the more difficult it becomes for people to differentiate and understand and gather momentum. So the nature-positive economy is still a very new term. And when I was looking for, you know, an academic reference, I couldn't find a lot of literature in this area. But we did like this. We thought this definition from the University of Cambridge's Institute for Sustainability Leadership captured really what we wanted to do and achieve, which is really a nature-positive economy, is where businesses, governments and others take action at scale. And the scale is important, to reduce and remove the drivers and pressures fueling the degradation of nature, and work to actively improve the state of nature and the ecosystem services it provides and on which we all depend. So we see that nature-based solutions can play a vital role in the nature-positive economy. And I've put a really, really simple schematic together on the right to try and highlight the potential for synergies between some of these other concepts that are out there, between the bioeconomy, the circular economy, and the nature-positive economy. And indeed, we have to be really it's really important that we embrace those synergies, because what we have seen in our work with cities is that there's a lot of silos. So we can see the bioeconomy. Here we have the agricultural, departments and ministries saying, okay, we'll look after that. And we have the economic ministries saying circular economy, okay, we'll take that. And, we're not exactly guilt-free here. We have a lot of environment departments saying, yeah, we'll take nature-based solutions. And what we really need is to bring together these different policy perspectives and these different concepts and really look at both the differences and the synergies. And we think nature-based solutions has a very important role to play. And just to give you an example, this is from a paper that we're working on at the moment. Esme, my co-author, will recognise that. So we're trying to make a difference between how are nature-based enterprises really different from other types of enterprises. And it's perhaps a little bit of an oversimplification, but it'll help for illustration. So I suppose one of the key differences is the mission of a nature-based enterprise is really to, achieve environmental impact. And they recognise that they have to bring people along, so there's social objectives related to those environmental objectives. You have to bring people on that journey with you. But they can still, they're not, a lot of people say, oh, then you're social enterprises. There's this trying to put people into boxes, all the time. But actually, nature-based enterprises have tremendous capacity to scale and contribute through using viable business models to reach their environmental and societal goals. And we need to find a way to help them do that, because there is tremendous opportunities. If you think of the scale of the environmental crisis that we're facing and the biodiversity crisis, there's enormous potential if we help those enterprises to scale using different models. It could be franchise models, so they replicate at community level, or cooperative models, different types of models to help them achieve these impacts. And then just a very simple comparison. Your traditional, I suppose, enterprise or conventional would be more focused on economic goals. So how are we going to grow? How are we going to create revenues, generate returns for investors, and so on? And, that's fine. But what we're seeing is that a lot of enterprises are scaling at best while doing no harm to environment or society. But you can see there's a fundamental difference there between doing no harm to the environment and actually, as a primary goal, trying to address the environmental crisis we have. So, yeah, there's a fundamental difference, I think, in approach. But we need more research to kind of really understand this, and that's what we're working on at the moment. So in terms of the recommendations coming out of this report, there are 6 recommendations that came out from the consultation, but they're very much framed within 2 kind of contextual factors. First of all, there's this need, as we said, for a change in economic thinking, away from the business as usual, sustainable, growth cycles, using resource-intensive and degrading nature, to more regenerative economic models which respect nature. And then the other kind of key element of nature-based solutions approach is co-creation. So it's not something that nature-based solutions only work when they're co-created with citizens and communities and generate returns for those important stakeholders. Within that framework, the key issues to be addressed, I'm not going to go into these in detail. There's tons and tons of pages of recommendations in the report, but just to summarise, some of them you'll be familiar with. So there's a need for standards, and that was mentioned in the policy session this morning. We're all aware that as the term nature-based solution has become more recognised, that there's a certain amount of greenwashing happening, and the term is being used in particular around kind of, carbon storage and, carbon trading, and used to support solutions which are very much not nature-based solutions, like monoculture plantations, for example. So there's a need for standards to define very clearly what is and what isn't a nature-based solution. And there are some standards already out there. The IUCN Global Standard is a very good start, but it's what we need is, more than general guidelines. We need sector-specific standards as well. So what makes a good green building, green wall, and not just in terms of the construction, but also, very importantly, with nature-based solutions, the long-term maintenance of such solutions. So that came out very strongly from the industry. They want these standards. Measurement and valuation was another one. So that has been, I suppose, one of the reasons why our projects were funded was to create this evidence base to show the effectiveness of nature-based solutions and to demonstrate that. So the more we can measure the effectiveness of nature-based solutions, the more investment will be secured. And I think there's a lot of really good work happening in that. The next level, or the next point in terms of multi-level cross-sectoral policy frameworks, so that is a point, I think, which we've addressed just in the slide earlier in terms of the need to bring these different policy areas together to really create synergies and momentum. And the fourth one, investment in MBS. So there's a lot of work happening in this area, and I think we have seen, and we were discussing this over lunch, that the EU taxonomy on sustainable finance is really having an impact in directing investment towards these types of activities. More could be done in terms of focusing on biodiversity, but that's work is underway. We're going to look at a moment at some of the sectors within the nature-based economy, and some of them share many common challenges, but there are also specific challenges, say, to green buildings or health care, which need to be highlighted and which need to be addressed. So if we can cast a spotlight on this report and hopefully get some specific support measures addressing those. And finally, awareness raising and capacity building. I mean, we're all in this room because we know and we're convinced, but there's a large parts of different policy departments, large parts of the community and large part of the business who don't simply know about nature-based solutions. So there's a need to raise awareness and then to build capacities, to integrate standards, for example, into public procurement practices, to help small businesses to measure the effectiveness of their solutions. So there's an awful lot that needs to be done to generate the momentum that we need. Marcus, will you let me know when I've got 5 minutes left? So I could go on, as you can probably tell. So I wanted to just focus now on the work that we've been doing more specifically in this area of nature-based enterprises. And you might have seen this framework presented this morning. So we identified that there's 3 phases: planning, delivery, and stewardship of nature-based solutions. And there are these 7 different building blocks which need to be considered. And from the very beginning, we put entrepreneurship and nature-based enterprises as one of those building blocks. And when we did that, a lot of our cities were scratching their head and going, what? It's the first time they really had to consider the concept of entrepreneurship in relation to nature. So we had to explain what do we mean by nature-based enterprises and why are they important. And what we have seen is that as the concept is mainstream, as demand has increased, this is all really, really good, but reports from other projects, UNaLab actually, identified that finding skilled and experienced suppliers is becoming a major roadblock. So it's one thing quadrupling and tripling investment in nature-based solutions, but if you can't deliver high-quality solutions, that's going to backfire. So there's a really important need to maybe look outside of the public sector, which has traditionally delivered and maintained such solutions, and engage the private sector and communities in this effort. And that's where the enterprises come in. And you can see already from some of the research that we've done, we've seen a lot of startups in this area in more recent years. So just an example of where they fit in. So we can see at planning stage, the types of nature-based enterprises involved. An example is landscape architects and biodiversity experts who can provide advice on optimal planning. Delivery, specialised horticulture contractors, and we have a couple of those I see sitting in the audience, and developing the mobile green living room that's on display outside. And then at stewardship, we have seen some great examples of community interest companies, for example, who maintain these solutions and ensure that they respond to community needs in the long term. And how do we support all of these enterprises with viable business models and financing so that they can scale outside of the community if that is their objective? So what we did in Connecting Nature is 3 things. First of all, we had to answer, as Marcus said, the concept of nature-based solutions was very new at the start. The concept of nature-based enterprise It's something we came up with. So we had to say, what did we mean? So we did a lot of research, Esme, in the audience, doing a lot of research in this area to define what it meant and what are the challenges and enablers they faced. We also supported the creation of this platform because we recognised while a lot of enterprises identified with this, there was a need to raise awareness and to build capacities. So the platform is led by communities, by practitioners who help to work with practitioners in that sector across the world to raise awareness of what is good practice. And to network and support. And then we organised this summit in June last year, which really helped to raise the profile. So what we've been doing then afterwards has been really working with our cities to say, well, how do nature-based enterprises fit within their strategies? How can they reach out and engage with nature-based enterprises in planning, delivery, and stewardship? So there's a really quick definition of nature-based enterprises. It's a working definition. I think there's room for scope, there's room for improvement there. But the private enterprises that use nature as a core element of their product service offering, we differentiate between direct use of nature, growing, harnessing, harvesting, and indirect, which could be these planning and advisors. And these are the 11 economic sectors which we identified where the private sector actors are involved in supporting the implementation of nature-based solutions. And we have, for each of those sectors, or not for all of them, but for many of them, there are communities on the platform where people can get together, and there are also cross-sectoral communities because there's a lot of synergies between these sectors. So we often see people involved in many. So I'll finish with just 2 case studies. One is from our city of Glasgow, and it's to show at city level how cities can really lead in supporting the growth of nature-based entrepreneurship. So Glasgow launched a pilot last year. They recognised their nature-based solution is citywide. They have a lot of derelict and underused vacant spaces, and they wanted to involve citizens in taking over, owning and managing this in the long term. So they put out a call for applications for how could this space be used to support entrepreneurship. And they really didn't know, as you don't with pilots, how it was going to go, but they were massively oversubscribed. I think there was about 40 applications for the final it was originally 5 places, but I think they extended it to 10. And we're happy to see that it's now been mainstreamed. So this year, I think it's closing this month, they have a 6-month fully funded programme which they're running in collaboration with their university partners and also Melting Pot, which is a social innovation partner. So it's great to see a pilot turn into a mainstream action and to see these enterprises emerging which will really support into the long term the stewardship of nature-based solutions right across the city of Glasgow. Now, this is a really heavy slide, but it's the last one, okay? So I think it's the last one. I will finish here, okay? Yes, it is, okay. Thank you, Marcus. So this is a case study from Austria, and I picked it because Leonora Gewessler, who is the minister for all of those things from Austria, she presented, I suppose, their vision at our Enterprise Summit last year. And I think it's very relevant for this presentation because they really have zoomed in on what they see as the economic potential of nature-based solutions. And they have commissioned this study on the potential of the green market. And what I saw already is there's 550 companies active. A lot of them are small, but they're involved right across in technology, planning, both execution and maintenance. But they see it as an area with a high degree of innovation and a high degree of growth potential. And what I thought was really interesting is that, again, they see that it creates synergies with other sectors. So there's opportunities there for synergies with the circular economy, with solar green roofs. Well, that's more about the use and purification of grey water on roofs. But this also in terms of energy, that the cooling effect of the plants boosts the performance of photovoltaics. So these are the kind of synergies that I think we need to explore more. And they have identified through their research that currently 10%, 1 in every 10 flat roofs in Austria is a green roof. And for every 8,000 square metres of green roofs, 10 new jobs are created. So they estimate that if that was increased to every second new roof by 2030, that more than 33,000 jobs would be created. So massive growth potential there. And what they did is they set up this agency, Grünstach, which is an innovation lab of the ministry, to really say, well, how can we move the industry forward? So they don't just do research, but they provide these back to the standards and the quality assurance again. And they also very much play an important role in building awareness and capacity building, helping businesses and consumers to work out cost-benefit ratios, provide information on standards, grants and subsidies, and they have their own mobile exhibition space, a little bit like our own mobile green living room, so that people can really understand what it looks like and feels like. So it's a way, I think it's a really good example of at a national level in Austria, at a city level in Glasgow, how the public sector can really work to stimulate and support nature-based enterprises. I'm not going to have time, unfortunately, for Jonathan, but you can meet him outside. So, sorry, you're there in person, so we'll have a chat with Jonathan afterwards. But yeah, so just in conclusion, we need this urgent shift in economic policy thinking. Nature-based solutions play a vital role in that. We think nature-based enterprises present significant potential, and we see that EU policymakers, national and city governments can play a role in creating these conditions that we need for those types of enterprises that work in harmony with nature to really thrive. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Super, Siobhan, thank you very much. We'll move on while Sophie's getting shared. I just want to remind you that all of this information will be available in video form after the conference on the YouTube sites, but you can visit any of the sites. I think the next slide is... There we go. Any of all of our project websites will have all this information for you there to either access or download. You can contact them there. So I'll leave it. This is Sophie.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to take you on the journey that GrowGreen went through to build up our case for financing more MBS. We started out very much on the awareness raising front. We found that many of our decision makers, practitioners, especially municipal officers, still weren't aware or confident about this new, as it was then, concept of nature-based solutions. So we began with a sort of compendium of different types of NBS, which was really straightforward to use. You could select along the top, I don't know if you can see very clearly, but you could select on the top which sort of climate issue you wanted to deal with, and then down the side you could select which of the solutions might be appropriate. And then you would move through the document and it would give you a bit more detail about each of those possible options, their effectiveness, their sort of comparison in terms of performance with grey solutions, and some general ideas around costings for those things. And we found that pretty much all of our partner cities have taken up using that document in various ways, either as sort of internal sessions for officers involved in the project. They've taken it out to regional sort of city partners and shared with lots of various different people just to sort of start the conversation going, really. So then we moved on to looking at the sorts of policy instruments that we might be able to use. Obviously, our demonstration projects in GrowGreen were all grant funded, so we didn't have to worry too much about the money for those, but what do we do next time and next time and next time when we want to build them? So looking at the sorts of policy instruments that we could be using. So this document, which was produced by Trinomics, our finance partner, divided the sorts of instruments that you could use into three types. So regulatory, those sort of mandated in various different plans and policies. sort of market or financial instruments, what would those ones be that could drive forward investment in NBS, and then also voluntary instruments going over and above the requirements that you might have in other places. So again, you can search through a sort of compendium of many different case studies of how all these different instruments have been used in different places, and it provides sort of the basis for people to go away and start thinking about how they might apply those different models in their own cities or their own cases. As part of GrowGreen, similar to how you heard this morning about connecting nature, about the process of embedding nature-based solutions in other policies of the city, GrowGreen has also been on that journey. So we're hopeful that some of the learnings that we have been generating will mean that that first category there on the left, the regulatory instruments in some of our cities, can gradually start to be strengthened over time as we gather the evidence that gives us the teeth to actually start to mandate those types of things. So another key element of the capacity building process that we went on was actually arming our green infrastructure practitioners with skills around making business cases. GI experts aren't necessarily business case experts. It was something they told us that they really wanted to know about, how to just write a basic case to try to justify why a green solution would be a better solution, why a particular nature-based solution was needed or necessary. So we had several sessions with partners around how to prepare a case, looking at sort of how it relates to the policy context that different places are sat in, what sort of governance structures might need to be navigated and negotiated and created, then the actual costing part, and cost-benefit assessment, as well as risk assessments around it. And this was really welcomed by our green infrastructure practitioners. So the final piece of the puzzle for us in GrowGreen, and as Marcus mentioned, we're not finishing right now, as Connecting Nature is we're finishing in 6 months' time. So at the moment, all our researchers are beavering away, gathering in the final parts of the evidence that they've been collecting on our demo sites, and we're hoping that we will be able to quantify some of those benefits. So this is an example of what they might be. So the red ones are the costs. So the sort of the actual build costs, the maintenance costs, any service costs. On some of the other models for the other cities, there was a cost specifically around watering. On another similar project I've worked on, there was a cost around, it was a street greening project, so there was a cost around loss of parking revenues. So there might be different things that you could add in there alongside all the different benefits that we may or may not be able to quantify, but we're hoping to give that as good a stab as we can about trying to quantify some of those blue values and helping to sort of shift the balance back towards the economic impacts that our demonstration projects are delivering. So I am an officer in a local authority, so I couldn't present about GrowGreen without telling you about the demonstration projects and showing you images of them. All three of our demonstration projects were in economically deprived areas of their cities. They were all part of wider regeneration programs, and they were all sort of demonstrating social benefits above and beyond the main regeneration program. In terms of sort of impact, though, I do think that demonstration projects do have a value in and of themselves, that the kind of the seeing is believing value. I think being able to take our practitioners and our decision makers and our citizens around our demonstration project there in Manchester has really does have a value in terms of getting people on board, enthusing. We can go through all the papers and policy documents and designs and advantages, but when we can see it and touch it and feel it, our parks manager told us that this new park that we created in Manchester made them look at the park landscape in a different way, and the different benefits that parks could bring to people made them sort of look at the landscape in a different way. And this is a landscape professional with kind of 20 years experience of managing parks. So we're eagerly awaiting all our results now from those demonstration projects, which we'll be bringing to you in November. Yeah, so I will leave you with, in fact, I'll just summarise. So I was trying to pick up through this talk on some of the themes that came out of the expert publication that Siobhan referred to about the process of sort of awareness raising and capacity building being really key, about demonstrating the economic impacts. This is the sort of journey that we've been on through in Manchester, and found that those things really are necessary, and sort of echoed the findings of that report in many ways. So I'll leave you with the sorts of the pictures that can't be valued. This is a before and after of one of our demonstration projects in Valencia, and I don't think you can put a value on that, can you?
Thank you very much, Sophie. That's fantastic. It's really interesting. And these are available on your site, where you can see some of the images on that. One very quick question came in is when will that you mentioned about deliverable that's not available public, about the policymakers. Do you know roughly when we might be able to hear that?
We weren't sure whether we were allowed to publish or not.
After the project is over, yeah.
So
okay, once it's evaluated by the European... Oh, yeah. You're sitting on the microphone.
Yeah, we, where I can, in the presentation, if you get the slides, there are links to the documents
Lovely.
where they're already live. Otherwise, watch this space on the GrowGreen website.
And as all the results of these projects will ultimately be public, because we have to be, so that's blanket, but it takes time because the European Commission has to evaluate them. So next up I have Laura from UNaLab. And just fun fact, Laura is also the founding editor of a journal called NatureBased Solutions, for which she finds it very easy and gives a lot of her time, and isn't exhausted at all by this. So if you want to know more, those of you who are academics and want to know more about the journal NatureBased Solutions, please read it and maybe spread the word about it. No, there.
Sorry, which one? The green one is the forward. Yeah, so I'm about to give a presentation on technology after asking which button is it. And this will probably be the only NBS presentation of the day without any pictures of actual NBS. So the overall message here is that technology can really help us a great deal in supporting the implementation, the creation, the implementation, the management, adaptive management over time of nature-based solutions, and also the formation of nature-based enterprise. And there are kind of a few different ways that we can do it. There's some unique opportunities provided by digitalization, which we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to really explore because we couldn't meet face-to-face for 2 years in our projects, which was actually really terrible, but it did give us an opportunity to fully exploit the opportunities offered by digital technologies. So we've worked a lot more engaging stakeholders and disseminating information, communicating, working together on collaboratively gathering data and presenting it online. We did a lot more of this in this, using technology in a digital sphere than we normally would have. And it was a good lesson for us, I think. It was really a hard lesson, but it was good. So I just, wrong button, moving forward. I thought what I would do is just show a few examples of some of the things that we implemented in our own project as a way to kind of spark some interest, maybe get the conversation going. So we talk a lot about using nature-based, using technology to support increased awareness of challenges, getting people aware of the kinds of challenges that we face and what can and cannot be addressed by nature-based solutions. We developed in our project something that we call the Online Nature Innovation Arena. And of course, I have to say, when we first started using it, our cities weren't that enthused. They said we would much rather meet in person. And what we found is that it cannot replace this online arena for ideating, developing ideas, brainstorming, making decisions and prioritizing. Cannot replace that face-to-face interaction, but what it can do is it can keep that conversation going. So we can kickstart something with our face-to-face meetings and our workshops and our traditional co-creation processes, and then we can move it online. And it brings a little bit different audience. Of course, there's always going to be these barriers to, for certain people to adopt digital technologies, and we may see different groups overrepresented. But I think this is a tool in our arsenal, and it's actually worked out pretty well. So there's a link here if you want to play with the Open Nature Innovation Arena. What I've tried to do here is just show a couple different examples of, I think this was a problem that was identified, and this was someone's idea. Someone said the Frederick Lawn is really ugly. Someone else said, hey, let's make a community garden along the Frederick Lawn. So collaborative ideation and design and gathering stakeholder feedback. Remember, we will say things online that we would never say to someone's face. So this is a great way to get really honest feedback about anything you want, because there's some sense of anonymity online, and people will just say anything. Just keep that in mind as well. We can also engage stakeholders through collaborative monitoring. And this is an example of how we've used an app. It's not something developed by the project. The iNaturalist app is free to use for anybody, and I would strongly encourage all projects to adopt it if you're considering looking at biodiversity, because it allows you to take your measurements and contribute to an online global database, and then we get all this information together in one place. And we can do really cool analytics to understand more about how species are moving, their distribution, how it changes in time. Anyway, we did this in Tampere. In the summer of 2020 and 2021, we got local citizens out observing things with their phones. You don't have to be an expert in biodiversity or science at all to contribute. And I think it was really exciting for citizens to get engaged here. We had 145 observations of 74 different species. And I know this is really hard to see, but this is the little park area, and you can see all the little red dots are the locations of people within a certain time frame loading their pictures of their beetle or their bee or whatever they were looking at. So it works super well. It was really exciting. And that helps us to understand the effectiveness of the nature-based solutions. So Sophie mentioned how we need to know what are the benefits, what do we gain from nature-based solutions? And I think this is probably where we think of technology most, as being most important, is understanding the performance and the impact. And gathering the data. Not only gathering the data, but managing data, compiling it, using advanced analytics to sieve through all this different information from so many heterogeneous sources, different time frames, different spatial temporal resolution. We're looking at everything from satellite imagery, which may be 30 square meters or 10 square meters, to sensor data, which could really only be that very, very tiny area right around the sensor, centimeters, millimeters even. We talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning a lot when we think about technology. This is a really cool way to combine multiple data sources. So, for example, if we're looking at human health, there are so many different factors that contribute to any given health outcome. So we're taking this epidemiological data and we're combining it with all sorts of environmental data as well, trying to understand behaviors, getting information from surveys. So we have objective data, subjective data, historical data, current data, and we really need some sort of AI or ML algorithms to sift through this and tell us what is a cause and what is an effect, and how do we attribute any sort of change to any given action. Anyway, moving on, because I know I'm just talking. When we talk about monitoring, one of the questions that always comes up is, what do we monitor and how do we do it? So Task Force 2 was this massive group of 188 co-authors from 30 different project teams who spent 3 years. Actually, there were 17 different EU-funded projects who were actively engaged in the writing, plus related programs, EEA and JRC. And we developed a tome, a somewhat weighty tome, called Evaluating the Impact of Nature-Based Solutions, a handbook for practitioners, and that walks you all the way through, starting from, do I want to monitor, to how do I do it, and then it gives you a suite of 446 indicators and specific methodologies across 12 different challenge areas, so you can not only find out exactly what you want to measure, but how to do it. And this is really complementary to all these different technologies, because there are usually multiple ways to do any kind of measurement, but to create a database, a European database, where we have all of our information together, and we can start to synthesize these data and understand the impacts and performance of NBS in different contexts, at different scales. Technology is really critical. But I wanted to give a plug to all the projects who worked so hard to create the appendix of handbook for practitioners, the appendix of methods, and the summary for policymakers, and provide links. If you have a chance, you don't have to read it cover to cover, and in fact, I wouldn't recommend it. It's probably 2,000 pages altogether, but it's good stuff, good reference documents. Okay, so I know I'm very, very long, but coming up on performance monitoring, one of the things that we've done in UNaLab is we've created these things we call city dashboards through it's a tool called the City Performance Monitor. And it enables citizens to view it in one way and expert users or people from the municipality to view it another way. And it's basically just connecting sensors. So this example is showing PM10, so particulate matter less than 10 microns in diameter, in units micrograms per cubic meter. Here we can see our target, I guess, minimum, maximum, and the average. And then this allows people to see exactly what this particular sensor was detecting over time. And you can see how it changes before and after the implementation of a specific NBS. But, sorry, that's just an example. There's a lot of different sorts of platforms out there for each project, and there are some that are multi-project, but it's really interesting, and I think it's nice for people to be able to see how is an individual nature-based solution performing, or what is the impact in the longer term. So just one great way that technology can support that. We can support decision-making as well through simulation and visualization. So this is taking historical data, data that we've collected through sensors, and putting it into models. So this is using numerical modeling typically to try to understand what are the potential impacts of a specific nature-based solution in a specific location. I think I picked air quality here as well. I think this is PM10, and this was looking at a specific suite of nature-based solutions proposed in Eindhoven and predicting what is the impact today, or what is the condition today, and what is the impact here. I think this was 2030. Whoa. Well, I guess we'll skip that one. No, I can go back. I can figure out how to go back. Nope, I can't. Okay. Anyway, so we have decision-making tools, and decision-making tools are really important because they allow us to make evidence-based decisions and visualize what's actually happening. Graphs and stuff are nice. Scientists, we love graphs. We like to look at a graph or a table and we think, oh, that's really cool. But the average person, not as excited. A nice map, something that's visual, that shows us very clearly what's changing, how is it changing, what sort of direction and what sort of scale of change are we seeing. And so these big data analytics in particular are really excellent ways to bring together all of the different data sources and help us understand what the consequences are or potential consequences of a specific action in the future. Okay, so this is my summary. What I tried to do was link back to the document that Siobhan showed earlier and just say that technologies have the potential to support the decision-making, to develop the market by helping us to create and protect intellectual property, connecting stakeholders, and providing evidence of the value that's created by nature-based solutions. We can increase participation, enable new financing models, We do see that there still remains a clear need for better, more and better quality data on nature-based solutions, their impacts and value chains. And here we can really harness technology to do that, So there's so many cool new technologies, drones and sensors and satellite data, IoT, GIS systems. And then through technology, these new tools can be developed that will facilitate the work of decision makers, make it easier to connect our citizens with our scientists and our decision makers, have this all of society transformation that we all want to see. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. So while we line up Raúl for the next presentation and get him to share his screen, I presume I don't need to touch anything. No, just let you. Okay. In the links for those of you who are online, I sent the link to that tome that Laura was talking about. It's a lot lighter online, and so we talked about the lessons that we've learned from enterprises, decision makers and planners. We talked about technology, and now Raúl's going to talk about the lessons in terms of collaboration and public-private partnerships. So I'll leave it to Raúl.
Thank you, Marcus. I was thinking that I'm feeling like in the Eurovision song connection. So my 12 points, of course, go to nature-based solutions. Sorry for this joke. Okay, thank you, Marcus and Siobhan, for inviting me and the Urban GreenUP project to participate in this event. Okay. My idea is to share with all of you how the nature-based solutions projects are able to address financial barriers, of course, regarding nature-based solutions implementation, and to emphasize also the relevance of the public-private collaboration as a way to support the nature-based solutions implementation. Okay, but firstly, I would like to mention some of the key financial needs identified in the Urban GreenUP project. Firstly, the public, as I mentioned before, public-private collaborations, a support of the nature-based solutions implementation, the extra financing with municipalities' budget. This is a very relevant need for cities. Third party and other stakeholders involvement. Here we have we'll have the possibility to develop legal agreements for ongoing maintenance with hosts of nature-based solutions, but also the placing of many nature-based solutions on third party land and building as another option. It's also important to have the council approach regarding the use of the short-term establishment, though with tree planting or other nature-based solutions, benefits of council maintenance budgets through the specific change in land use, and finally, as everybody knows, the community engagement. I would like to mention some examples of successful public-private collaboration in the context of the nature-based solution implementation, specifically in our project, of course. The first implementation is a green facade in the El Corte Inglés building in Valladolid with more of 500 square meters of green surface. The city council and this private company established, I don't remember exactly, in 2020, public-private collaboration through the signature of an agreement in where the company bears the cost of some building structure adaptation, and it made possible the final green facade final implementation, because if not, it would be not possible due to these structure issues. Another examples of regarding the public-private collaboration within our project is, for instance, the green wall on a private parking building in Liverpool. Also in Liverpool, a green facade on the St. John's Shopping Centre. And also is an example, we have many nature-based solutions implemented, but also at Parlex in Izmir, even although this is not a specific direct public-private collaboration, we think that these nature-based solutions affects directly to many business and other activities in the area, and the acceptance of the business and other city activities could be considered as part of the public-private collaboration or establishment. We need the acceptance of public sector, private and public sector to achieve a right nature-based solutions implementation. Of course, to get this success of public-private collaboration, it's important to provide with a legal agreement templates for everybody. As a flexible template agreement developed for nature-based solutions, HOTS, to outline ongoing risks, responsibilities, ownership and maintenance obligation after initial establishment. And also to deliberate location of nature-based solutions on third-party land and third-party building, to transfer financial maintenance on the nature solutions to the land or building owners. This is the idea. Okay, regarding the third party and stakeholder financial involvement, it is essential to involve external organization in the ongoing aftercare of nature solutions for several reasons. One of them is to removal of ongoing financial maintenance cost for poorly funded city municipalities. Everybody knows that we need more money to implement more nature-based solutions, and we need funding for this. To encourage external host ownerships and places a value of the nature-based solutions. This is aligned with the speech and the presentation of my after presentation of my colleagues. It's important also to demonstrate the corporate social value, commitment to climate change action, and facilitate learning for external nature-based solutions HOTS. This is also a way to engage more stakeholders. And finally, we need to allow external organizations also to help pioneer nature-based solutions, of course, and with this we are making them, these new pioneers and MBA providers, we are making them part of the innovation processes related to nature-based solutions. Okay. From a city council approach, and specifically regarding the financing nature-based solutions maintenance, there are some options or alternatives to that are being implemented. One of them is integrating nature-based solutions into the key city schemes and consequently into the city plans. The use of short-term tree establishment to ensure success and continued benefits. This is it seems simple, but it's complicated and it's very necessary. As an example of business case study of nature-based solutions implementation, for instance, the maintenance of such ponds is less than annual flood clear up cost. So this is a very clear example to how we can generate, how we can contribute to the business case implementation through the maintenance of soils. Other example, for instance, change in land management from amenity grass to pollinator planting has reduced also costs. And finally, it's very important active community engagement in the design and ongoing aftercare and adoption of sites. For instance, pollinator planting and trees and the containers, and it will support the maintenance of nature-based solutions. Well, regarding the barriers and lessons learned, we have identified, of course, barriers in procurement of nature-based solutions. I'm talking about tendering and contract processes and the timing of these processes. The community and stakeholders' consultation opposition to our plans to implement nature-based solutions. You know that the bad perception of nature-based solutions from a part society exists, so we need to fight against this. Could be necessary also to develop specific surveys in order to know needs, the needs of on utilities and on environmental aspect, transport, etc. These needs of the city, and finally approvals from the city council services, political and stakeholders, but also the permission regarding planning and license regarding legal aspects from external entities. For instance, if you are going to implement something near the river, you need the permissions for the river basin. And as conclusion and a summary of our procurement barriers and lessons learned, it's important to plan the implementation of nature-based solutions according to a schedule which has been adapted to match the duration of the procurement processes and the rest of the project. Administrative process take more time than expected. So to improvise is not good. It's not a good way to implement nature-based solutions, to work in nature-based solutions. We don't need to improvise. Carefully plan the annual financial elements for the implementation of nature-based solutions. In this way, we will be able to ensure the budget execution within the same fiscal year or in a mid-term basis. The technical project is one of the key documents in the whole process, affecting both tenderings and execution. So we need a very accurate technical specification of nature-based solutions. You also may need more than one tender for only one nature-based solution implementation. A tender may be required for the elaboration of the technical project, and another tender may be for the construction and execution. We need to anticipate this work. Also, really on the support of experts in each discipline, technical, legal, and procurement, a multidisciplinary team, and consequently approach will provide to our projects with a global point of view about the nature-based solutions implementation. We need to create a multidisciplinary team in the council. It's also essential, specifically, as I mentioned in the council, to avoid the lack of disconnection among areas or departments. We should do this from the very beginning on the implementation of nature-based solutions process. This is related to the next point. We need to coordinate perfectly. We need coordination among the city council departments with different responsibilities among priorities. It's not easy. Sometimes we just need a decision, but we don't have or we don't find the person in charge of this decision. And this provides a light to the implementation, and it's complicated. Make tenders and tendering processes easier for companies. Public tendering can discourage small organization because the process requirements sometimes are very complex. Tender scoring criteria also must be clear, easy and preferably mathematically and quantifiable to generate confidence. And finally, to allow time and resource, including financial resource for the unexpected, because we are working with living things, and nature-based solutions and contingents appear together, and we need a previous plan to solve all of them. And that's all from my side. You can find more information about our activities and about our project in this website. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Raúl. I think your last number 10 there is making everybody smile, allowing time for the unexpected. I think 2 years of COVID was definitely unexpected, but I think you meant also the unexpected things that arrive when you're trying to engage with stakeholders and procuring for nature-based solutions. So thank you so much. I think you can unshare your screen now, and we're just going to go through some questions. So first of all, again, thank you very much to all four presenters. Has anyone got any questions? I have one or two that have come in online, but I'll offer that to the floor first if anyone has come in online. Roisin?
The combination of those presentations are kind of mind-blowing, actually, and things that are coming out are when you put them together. So I'm just seeing that if we start to build in monitoring in the tender process, so in other words, I don't see this happening yet, right? So if we're asked to make a nature-based solution and we want to measure it properly, like, why not bring that monitoring stage into the tendering process? I think it's a really key point to make it very clear in the tendering stage what we're looking for when we're talking about nature-based solutions. So I think it's this, like, obviously we know a combination of different findings are coming out of the research, and this kind of, for me as an MBE and an ambassador for nature-based, we want to kind of see how can we do this, because it's massive, it's kind of overwhelming, these big tombs, like, and so so we need some sort of index system where we find, I want to do this kind of project, what do I need to make it a good best practice nature-based solution?
So the comment, I can just leave it there. The comment is about embedding monitoring into the tendering process. Is that right, Roisin? So maybe Raúl, in terms of your discussion about procurement, has any lessons or anything arisen about embedding monitoring and evaluation into the initial tendering process before procurement, or is it something that has yet to arrive?
Yeah, it's a very good question. To be honest, this is a part of unexpected action that, in my case, our project suffered, because when a city establishes a procurement or a tender process, the timing, I think that we need to monitor the timing to be very aware about the timing in order to control the process. I mean, in order to control the delays of the process, because sometimes when you are not able to control this or to monitor this, the time is going, and you are not able to control internally the tendering processes, and you are accumulating delay. And when we work with living things, this is not a good thing, because we are working with plants, and we need to plant in a specific period of time. So we didn't have we didn't take into account in our project. But I think that this is a very, very good point, and maybe our colleague Laura, that she is expert in monitoring, maybe she can complement my answer. But it's a very good point to take into account in the MBS projects.
Thanks, Raúl. Laura nearly had a heart attack. So I think Sophie wanted to say something about procurement.
Yeah, I've just got one more thing. I'm not sure about monitoring into the sort of tendering process for the design and build, but one thing that we definitely wished in Manchester that we'd structured a bit differently in our tendering process was, I think the way we asked for the cost plan to come back in itemised didn't allow us to sort of, everyone's after that holy grail, aren't they, of how much does a swale cost and how much does a this and a that cost, and the way that we did ours in our tendering didn't allow us to say that, because we still had the overheads and the site set up as kind of separate budget lines. So not necessarily about monitoring, although sort of would add to the body of knowledge about cost of individual NBSs. That's something that we did wish we'd done, given a bit more thought to how the bidders had written their cost plan, so that we could almost cost per element.
Siobhan?
It's an interesting question, and it's not a straightforward question, as they rarely are, because there are monitoring is really important. And I can see Hans sitting here in the audience, and one of the things he manages green infrastructure, Helix Pflanzen in Germany. But one of the things that is really important, and he always says, is raising awareness about the importance of the aftercare. So if you put in place monitoring from the outset, you know, that is one way to do that. But it can also be really costly. And I know Helix have sensors that they use to monitor the water and the nutrient needs of their plants. So technology is a way, I think, that can be helped to bring down the costs of monitoring. But it can also be used to show the long-term impact, because one of the things we hear is, oh my God, nature-based solutions, they're much more costly than alternative solutions. But if you can use monitoring to show over time the impacts that they generate, and that nature-based solutions, as we say, appreciate over time rather than depreciate like grey infrastructure. And I think I would actually agree. I think it's really important that we look at monitoring. We look at the 3 phases of planning and co-creation, which is another big problem in procurement processes, that there's not sufficient time allowed for that. Then your straightforward delivery, which is usually what most public procurement processes are all about, just that phase in the middle. But then the long-term stewardship, and how can we make sure that they allocate sufficient budget for technology, and how do we use technology not just to measure the environmental impacts, but also, very importantly, the social, the health, the economic impacts, without creating a burden on companies and creating an unfair playing ground, if you like, for smaller companies that mightn't have access to those technologies versus large companies. So it's a really good suggestion. I like it, but it is complex.
Laura, do you want to say something, or is that? There's another question, but I want just to say that we're at the time, but we did start about 12 minutes late. So you know, if I'm keeping you from coffee, we will apologise. But we've just got a few more things. But so maybe, yeah.
Okay, I just got to say something about monitoring.
Yeah.
Monitoring and technology, because I love monitoring. No, it's not just about understanding the performance and the impact of your nature-based solution. It's really about understanding how the world around us works. And we use monitoring, and it is costly, but it's so necessary, because how can we adaptively manage a system? How do we understand how it's performing over time as the world around it changes if we're not monitoring? So I think at the design stage, it's really important to have the monitoring systematically considered during the design stage, so that as we go on and we learn about how the world is working, how is our nature-based solution working, what impact is it having, it allows us to support that systemic transformation that we want to see.
Okay.
So I had to say something.
Sorry, no, I'm glad you. Hans, because actually, just to finish now, because we have a lot of people talking about monitoring and evaluation. Some questions coming in about comparing the economic impacts of non-nature-based solutions versus nature-based solutions. This is an enormous program of investigation, all the projects. So, but this is very much a key part of it. Monitoring it, do they work? I mean, there's no point talking about nature-based solutions unless they solve the problem. The definition is in the name. Hans, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that this is really, really important. It is the missing link. We as a company, we get the orders from the cities, but it's the missing link that the idea of a green infrastructure and the delivery of ecosystem services really works. You need that instrument of monitoring. If you don't have that, you trust that stewardship and the maintenance will work because it worked for the last 50 years. But if you expect a certain delivery of ecosystem services, you have to plan money to monitor that. And then, as I said, this is my understanding, it's a missing link.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you want to reply to that? Yeah. Sorry, okay, there's a question. Sorry, Caroline has a question there. So thanks, Esme.
Thanks. Yeah,
Stuart.
So I have a question, but just a comment. So I would echo that. As someone who does a lot of monitoring, getting in at the design phase means that you can have a much more effective monitoring plan. Trying to squeeze it in after you've done the design and build creates all kinds of problems. But my question was to Raúl. Hey, Raúl. About you presented the economic justification for SUDs, and you mentioned that the maintenance of SUDs was cost less than the flood clear-up. I just wondered what kind of scale that you'd done that at, whether it's a citywide scale of a kind of economic, or whether it was just at a very local scale solving a specific problem.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. I have this information from our city, so I'm not an expert in such, but I know that they are working at a street scale, so maybe a city scale, not a global scale or a regional scale. I don't know if you are asking about about this. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, Raúl, we missed the end there, Raúl.
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Say it again.
Oh, hello?
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
move
now,
on.
maybe now, yeah. I was saying that our cities are working in a local scale, not a regional scale or something like this, local scale.
On the local scale, yeah, okay. Are there any more questions or comments on the floor? One or two then, just very quick ones then before we pack up. Raúl, you mentioned earlier on about, well, actually, the other end of it, what are the incentives in terms of how do we increase, this is to all of you, how do we increase the demand for nature-based solutions in cities? It's a two-part question. And how do we involve private enterprises in this demand? So maybe we'll go to you first in this. So how do we increase the demand for nature-based solutions in cities, and how do we increase the nature-based enterprises in this demand as part of the local economy?
I'll answer the second part first,
sure.
Because actually I'll answer it using a case study that we have from one of our cities in Nicosia in terms of how do we involve private enterprises. They have a very interesting model called Adopt a Park, where they actually they engaged with citizens. They created these real public-private people partnerships. So they engaged local businesses, made them aware of the needs of local communities. They identified all of these opportunities for small park developments, and then they created these kind of Adopt a Park schemes where they brought together local business investment in the long term to meet citizens' needs in the development of a park. So it's a nice example of how local businesses can be involved in local projects with local citizens. There are many other examples at scale and many different types of incentives to create demand. And I know and a plug into the Interlace project because they're creating an atlas of all of the measures that are out there at the moment to kind of stimulate demand. To simplify it, I always think it's like a carrot and a stick, and you kind of need both. There are many types of incentives that can be made available for businesses and citizens. The challenge that we're seeing at the moment is that in, say, some areas like agriculture, the incentives for negative practices are more attractive than those for positive biodiversity practices. So we just need to be really, really careful that, again, we bring together these different policy departments to create incentives that match up.
All right, I'll take the first half of the question.
Thank you.
So how do we create demand? We create demand by showing people all the wonderful things that they can have. I mean, we all know that nature-based solutions are multifunctional, right? They deliver multiple co-benefits. So if we can show everybody, not only do you have this beautiful park or this really nice green wall or green roof, but these are all the different benefits that you as a community are deriving from this nature-based solution. Everyone else will want those benefits as well, right? I mean, we always want what someone else has, especially the good stuff. So I think that's how, it's dissemination, communication, showing people the good things that we can have. We're bringing back the birds, the bees, the bats, butterflies, look there's hedgehogs. Isn't this cool? I mean, who doesn't think that's cool?
Yeah.
And there's ducks.
And she's just had chicks.
Yeah, I mean, I think I already said that in my presentation, so I'd echo that wholeheartedly. I think, going back to somebody's comment earlier, we had kind of a big thing that's happened over the last couple of years. It's also increased the demand, haven't we? Everyone's needed their local nature and started to appreciate the value. I think in people's heads, people are seeing the value that that nature has brought to them. In Manchester, we did a survey about local nature and about how people valued local nature, and some of the quotes literally did say, nature saved my life. That's how strongly some people felt about the value of nature to them during the pandemic when there was nowhere else to go.
That's very good. And actually, I totally echo that, especially during the COVID era, last 2 years, we've done a lot of research on people, and we've heard comments, lots and lots of comments like nature saving my life. And I mean, and I would just, myself would answer by saying, what you guys in Helix have done is built a machine that takes the nature-based solution to people to say, look, that's what the thing looks like if you want it, and we have it parked outside for you to look at and sit on and enjoy and just get a feeling for it. You do need, people need to see it, to touch it, to smell it, to hear it. They need to be able to see the benefits before they really get in behind that. It's one thing the policymakers doing it, but it's another thing the community supporting it. So I would totally agree with that. I'm conscious of the time because I'm sure that I can hear the coffee stomachs rumbling. Well, one more question and can I get the microphone? Oh, Stuart, yeah, thank you.
It's not really a question, a column from Etifor in Italy. It's more just a response, I suppose, to somewhere between the two questions. And creating demand, we have a little bit of experience of this in Etifor, specifically with private corporates. It's a little bit easier to create demand, the kind of demand that we're speaking about when we speak about an individual citizen. This is true because at individual level, it's easier to touch these kind of emotions, but they're not the ones that will pay in bulk for the kind of services that we're speaking about. Corporates can. But what do corporates want to see? Private corporates want to see. They want to see a positive impact that they can show at face value, that say their companies, their organizations are having an impact that's bringing down their negative impact somewhere else. And you can do this through labels and certification. And we do some of this in Etifor. And one recent one that we have been working with is the Ecosystem Service certification that's being provided by FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council. And this is quite an interesting one. While it doesn't certify the ecosystem services themselves, it does verify them. So the corporates then have this label that they can say this has been, the positive impacts have been verified by. Mm-hmm. And in this way, you're bridging corporate investment to the ecosystem service. So it's just an additional point.
Etifor, and I wholeheartedly endorse having a look at Etifor's website because there's some information on that. And actually, one of the online people sent us, and I'll show it to you because I can't send you the link, but there is a workshop on nature-based solutions standards for climate, the uptake of nature-based solutions happening, an online one in May. I'm going to pronounce this wrong, okay, you'll see it if you want to, on your way out, you can have a look at it and you can write it down. It's an online one. Thank you, Sarah, for sending that in to us. I'm conscious of the time. Does anyone want to have a final words? Siobhan, yes?
No, I just wanted to...
You want to respond? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, to respond on that column. And actually, I think you've touched on a very important point, which brings everything together nicely in a way, which is, again, and there's a whole chapter in the publication on the role of technology. And one thing that we've seen is that investors are looking for really large-scale projects, okay? Communities are looking for really small-scale projects. Cities play a really important role in aggregating projects. So if I take the example of Glasgow, what they have done is they've worked with the platform, or they're working with Trees AI, And they almost do the due diligence, if you like, for the investors, where they aggregate the projects to say, okay, we know this has followed the Connecting Nature framework. We know it's been co-created with citizens. We know it's going to look at the 3 different types of impacts. So there's a really important role for technology, but also for intermediaries, I think, like cities, to aggregate what communities want with what investors want. And I think that's a really important role. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so those of you who are online, I sent links to all 4 projects and their results. Those in person will have to actually go and talk to the humans. And sorry, Raúl can't be here, unfortunately, but you certainly, any inquiries would like to say. On a personal note, I'd like to say I'm so delighted that we met first in person in Raúl's house, in Valladolid 3 years ago, Raúl, and that's the last time all 4 of us have seen each other as a project. So I'm actually personally, I think we're all quite delighted to be back in the room together. And as I remind you, this is not the last, this is actually the first of a series of thought-provoking and reflecting on the works of the projects as we go over the next 12 months. So I want to say again, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for everything online, and enjoy your coffee. Thank you.